G'day guys, welcome to the Wilson Fishing Flathead Masterclass. Today we're going to talk to you about all the flathead tactics you're going to need to catch more flathead, but also talk about how you can go about fishing the Flathead Classic this year. We've got Dicko, Nick, Robbie and Scotty, and they're going to give you all the answers to your questions. We've got a whole series of sections we're going to cover, including casting, fishing the deep, fishing the shallows, how you go about fishing big lures, all those sort of things, all your questions answered, and we've got 3 prize packs to give away. So I'm going to leave it over to these guys, and I'll just lead with the first question from Mark Davidson, who won the competition for the first question of the night, and that is, do you go big and target quality size fish before the boat traffic puts them down at the Flathead Classic, or do you go from numbers from the start? And for that, I'll hand over to Robbie, and he'll answer the first question.
Well, that's a good question. Do you go big, target quality size fish before the boat traffic puts them down? That depends on the tide, of course, and where you're fishing. The tide is the big dictator of everything in the Flathead Classic. So depending where you're fishing, whether you go big or not, to answer that question. What do you do before the boat traffic puts them down? So your confident spot, you go to your purple spot and you hit your purple spot with your absolute confidence at that stage of the tide, so as you try and make hay while the sun shines. So get in, try and crack some good fish, at least, get half a dozen scorers on the board in the first hour, and it gets the team kicking along. And that's probably my best bit of advice for do you go big or what do you do before the traffic is. Go to your purple spot, hit it hard at that stage of the tide, and just try and get some on the board to settle everyone down and keep rolling them on from there. What's your theory, Nick?
Yeah, look, I'm pretty much along the same lines. Like, I think you've got to go to your best spot, pretty much be there, try and get the fish you can. Like, and it might not be your best spot, but the best spot for that point of the tide. It's no use going to your best high tide spot if you're starting on a low tide. So I don't think you can worry about boat traffic at all. You just got to go to where you think you're going to put the most fish in the boat and where you're going to capitalise most at that point of the tide. So
yeah, I'm much the same. Just go to your most confident spot at that stage of the tide. You want to try and capitalise the most out of that first period where you had no pressure on those fish for at least 12 hours at least. Anyway,
exactly.
So you want to try and catch as many of those fish as you possibly can. So I'd say go to your number one spot for sure.
Yeah, for that stage of the tide.
Oh yeah.
And obviously you get that from your pre-fishing and understanding what you're doing, and that's what pre-fishing's all about.
Oh, someone's asked a question for me.
So that's a good question, Troy. It's Troy. You won the Top Gun event casting flat shads. Can you give some tips on casting flat shads?
Yeah, keep casting. There's a few little tips I think with the little flat shad. It's been working really, really well for me, especially this year. Even last year's Flathead Classic is when we really started going, with the little flat shad. And I've found that with the little one, mate, you just got to go as light as you possibly can. Like, we're throwing this most of the time. We're throwing it into, probably 2 foot of water, even sometimes shallower. So if it's got a heavy head on it or anything like that, we've been actually rigging it with a jig head, just so we make that clear. We've been putting a little 3 gram jig head in it, a little 3 gram 3.0 in the mustard data jig heads. That seems to work really well with that size, that little one. And light leader. I find in that shallow water, we use like 12 pound, and we don't go over that sort of thing. Sometimes I'll even use 10. That's just a couple of tips, and it just seems to be working really well. I don't know, like if you look at it when it drops to the like on the way up, it actually got a really nice beat on the tail, but when it drops, it looks like it's just dead. If you physically think, oh yeah, that doesn't look very good, but the fish just seem to love it.
I think with it also, Dicko, is with the lighter heads, and you're casting in that mottily broken ground where you got weed clumps with a bit of eelgrass and stuff like that. you can actually drop it into that clear patch and sort of wiggle it and work it through that eelgrass to drop it into the next patch, and that's...
Well, that's another good little point with that. I found that my retrieve is, well, it varies from day to day. Like during the Top Gun, we were doing a lot of shaking of the rod, you know, so you're hopping it up and you're really shaking the rod tip, and that really worked. And then the day before, we were actually getting them on a really slow wind, and then a stop, and you let it sink back to the bottom, and a real slow wind, and then boom, they were eating it. So, mate, you just got to change it up as you go. So
most people have probably seen the picture of Scott's fish from this morning, and Scott, exactly like Dicko's saying, just slow down,
fishing really slow.
yeah.
But you know, on the other side, I'm fishing a bit heavier head, but I'm working a little bit deeper water too. So
Yeah.
I find that works for me. But we've
So
got
there's a
a
question,
question
for you,
from Barry. Are there other soft lures that are good for casting? Yeah, look, we use a variety. We mix it up. The little flash minnow wrigglies, they're a nice thin profile. We found a lot of like small bait today, you know, things that were 60, 70 mil long,
tiny,
and sort of glassy type things. But to be honest, you know,
As long
my
as they're
go-to
beyond
ones, the fish traps are a versatile lure all round. We'll have a quick look at those, but you know, they're bait fish profiles. The colours are great, and just that tiny little pintail or the paddle tail there just really gets the fish in. But again, I work them a little bit faster, but you know, because you know that style of bait seems to move pretty quick, so I try and mimic that. But
the other thing also, if you're using something like that with a paddle tail versus something like that, if you're in current, you're going to use something like that because it's a slimmer profile. It goes down a lot quicker and it's not affected by the current as much as a big paddle tail, which will slow it down and hold it up with the current. And you know, so thin, just as a rule of thumb, thin profile for fast current, and if you want to slow things down and try and wiggle it through the grass and so forth, the paddle tail with a bit of buoyancy, which these have, that you can actually, like Dicko said, you can actually shake them through the weed and so forth, whereas this will just plummet straight into the weed and it'll drive you nuts. So clear, fast water for the slimmer profile. I don't know.
Another lure too. What we're talking about, soft lures, is the little prawn, the prawn imitations in particular. Especially at like I find that this time of the year, I've always got one of these tied on my rod as well. So that's a Lazeric hot leg. So really soft body, got lots of legs, got lots of movement, and you can rig these up. You know, I've got this one rigged on the hammerhead jig head that comes out of the pack, and I've found a lot of the times when you're using these, because that TPE plastic that they're made out of, they actually sit on the bottom with that hammerhead style jig head. So with TPE plastic, it's very, very buoyant, so it actually floats, so it's always fishing. So I've found a lot of the times when I'm using this, and I use this in say 2 or 3 meters of water a lot, and you let it sit on the bottom, especially in a bit of tide, and that tail floats up and it's always fishing. So you can, I've had quite a few sessions now where you've just left it sitting on the bottom and that fish have eaten it straight off the bottom. So that's just another soft plastic. You know, we were talking about soft plastics.
and that Absolute shrimp's the new one as well. So that comes pre-rigged with a standard hook. I don't know if you can see that there, but it's a proud sort of hook type thing. They, the ones Troy had, we can rig them weedless as well, but this is a actual proud hook. So they work similar action, you know, that split tail.
I've found with them in particular of this year where I've caught quite a few good fish on them now, and I've found wherever there's a fair bit of run, a fair bit of current, where you're not actually doing much with the rod, you're actually just throwing it out and letting it come back with the tide and just shaking the rod.
The current holds it up. Yeah.
Very, very good lure in that high running.
Easy fishing.
Yeah.
Casting. So Sean asks, do you ever cast hard bodies?
I reckon we'll give this one a Nick. He's been doing a bit of this.
Yeah, so I've been fishing, usually I fish deep water majority of the time, but this year I've been playing around casting really big hard bodies like the swim baits, but also been throwing the Barra X Pro in the 120. So usually if I'm fishing with someone, we'll be throwing, well, most of the time I've been throwing the big profile, but then throwing something a bit smaller like this, fishing it up in sort of that 30 centimetres, even under, you know, sort of working out of 10 centimetres of water and just fishing the rod tip high, keeping it up nice and tight and just working over the top of that weed. And we've been picking up quite a few fish, sort of in that sort of 40 to 65 centimetre range, and it's a big enough lure that it's still going to attract those bigger fish, but still, you know, pick up those smaller fish that are hanging up there as well. So yeah.
It's not just about big lures either too. You can actually cast the Tango shads. You can cast the bulldog cranks. We got like there's another little one called the Pyra. It's a 90 mil lure. There'll be one on the wall there somewhere. There's a little Pyra, and it's got like a little magnetic cast control system in it, and it casts, especially in windows, real windy conditions. It's got that system in it where it casts a fair distance, and it's been working quite well. It comes in two sizes. I think there's 90 and a 120 mil. That's been working quite good for us. So, you boys have been throwing a few hard bodies around too. So
I've been sort of, when the boys are casting, I just mix it up and throw something a little bit bigger. But again, like what Nick said, I'm throwing that 120 mil, and it does get you that range of fish. You know, it's not just targeting the big ones, because you know they don't come along every throw, the big girls. So getting those point scorers through the day, it's really handy to pick up, you know, 50s and 60s on that medium size lure.
Sometimes they can make the difference when you've got that horrible part of the tide where you're sort of everyone's going, we got nothing, we just can't catch fish at this part of the tide. And at least if you've got a bit of confidence with a bigger lure, you can pick off, you know, your 45 centimetre fish and then get your big crocodile in a
I've found that even throwing those big hard bodies, the little fish don't hesitate to eat it.
No.
I haven't caught a big fish on one of these things yet, but I think I've caught a few 50s and 60s, so don't rule it out. The 50s and the 60s still
Are you using them straight out of the packet, Nick?
I'm doing a few little mods to them, so I'm running double rings on them just to get that hook out a bit, and I'm running a bigger hook as well. So. And
you're weighting it according to the tide, or
I have been fishing it. Like I've been playing around with them. I've got two swim bait rods rigged up, and I have one rigged with Whyte and one rigged without. And then if I'm fishing up in that really, really shallow water, so I'm talking like sometimes you're seeing fish up in 10, 15 centimetres of water, you know, like this sort of deep, you're seeing 90 centimetre fish come out of that sort of water. So you don't really want any weight.
Yeah. So for anyone that doesn't know, they do come with weights that you can change.
So basically, they come with the medium or the first weight and then a heavy weight as well. And they look very similar in size, but the heavy weight is actually significantly heavier and makes it sink quite a lot faster. So you can get it down and actually, you know, we'll get in and work it in along Kalinga Bank, along the drop-offs, and fish it in 4 metres of water and actually swim it down there.
Yeah.
We need more beers.
It's only one left.
We've got to get home yet.
There's a whole safe full of it down there.
Yeah, but it's warm. We'll just sleep in it.
But they do look cool, eh? You know, up on the throwing that shallow.
I just enjoy swimming.
It just looks like a shark. Oh, we're back.
Back on.
Lost you there for a minute, but using the different weights. But I think we're talking about rods. I've got two Venom swim bait rods that basically have one rigged heavy, one rigged light. And if I'm fishing that water that's a little bit deeper, I don't have to worry about getting the screwdriver and taking the weight off, which is quite quick anyway. But you just might want to pick it up for 2 or 3 casts, and then
so they're just a tool to throw the lure, basically.
Yeah. And without a rod, like a decent rod like that, you've got no hope of fishing something like this. Yeah.
Not effectively, anyway. They got sharp hooks on them, do they?
They do.
Yeah. But they do look cool. You put them up in that shallow water with the weight off it, and they just look like a little shark swimming along. They're so cool.
You can sort of swim them basically on a slow wind, and they're just going to kick that tail out, and they basically just S-swim. Or you can just do either quick handle cranks or rod tip bashes, and it'll just spray out to the side, and you can get it to walk, you know, sort of a foot each way. So you're basically moving, you know, 2 foot coverage on each sweep of the rod. So it looks unreal when you've actually just got that thing gliding off to the side. And once you get a rhythm working, you can actually sort of get, even unweighted, you can get it down to probably, 2 or 3, probably 2 foot deep. So
it'll be good to see a few fish get caught on this in the Classic this year.
Yeah, they're not a tool that I'm going to use all Classic, but it's definitely going to be in the arsenal.
Yeah, okay.
There's another question there. When trolling for flathead, what's the best depth to start?
This is a good one for you, Robbie.
Oh, well, Dicko will help here too. But basically, if you stay anywhere between 0.6 and 1.2, that's realistically, if you fish the Flathead Classic and you pull out of the competition start gate down there where the clubhouse is, and you trolled all the way to the jumping pin and stayed in that depth of water, I'd be very surprised if you didn't catch quite a number of fish, because it's the golden depth.
Yep. The magic
So-
depth. Yeah. Right.
So for that, we're using the standard Tango shad and the shallow
Yeah,
Tango
we do a
shads.
1 metre diver in the last year or so, and actually finding I'm getting more fish on that 1 metre one.
Yeah.
Currently, we're fishing a bit shallower too.
What about your secret one?
Secret one, the deep one?
The secret one.
Yeah, we kept that from you last year. So
Yeah,
we came out with a 3 metre one too. That was thanks to Robbie's.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a
Design.
tackle tinkerer, so I put bibs on lures and make them do things that they shouldn't do, and also shave the bibs off to make them dive shallower, etc., etc. So we do have a little bit of an arsenal that is a little bit different. That
Some modifying.
modifying, yeah.
So we found that 50mm body profile was good.
Yeah.
You made the bigger bib, and that allowed us to get that 2.5 metres or plus or better.
Yeah, some of them went to well over 3 metres. Yeah.
So once those fish, we sort of hit that metre and a half mark, and the fish tend to slow up after you've given them a bit of a belting.
touch-up,
And
yeah.
yeah, you'll find that next little ledge, and that's where the idea of the deeper bib one. We've got one here somewhere, but we sort of started out with, we do a 69mm as well, and that generally picks up your better class of fish, I've found. But the little 50mm profile really racks the numbers up. So
That 50mm profile just seems to be the number one, no matter what lure you're using, if it's that 50mm profile, they're just dynamite. They just catch fish.
And they still catch big fish too.
That's
Like,
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Up
like-
until this year, that held my PB, so I had 93cm fish
Yep.
on a 50mm Tango shad, you know. So they
there's a lot of 90 plus fish come off these things. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like my saying. Elephants eat peanuts.
Yep.
Yeah.
They do.
Big lures catch big fish, small lures catch all fish.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's it. That's exactly right. So there's a question up here from Shane about trolling weed or rock or mud.
Yep.
So, well, I personally think I like weed edges, you know, or shaly banks, you know, so you get that bit of shell and, you know,
Yeah.
a bit of a mixture.
I think that, yeah, we like to say weed beds and that, but realistically, it's that current break that we're really looking for. So whether it be weed, whether it be rock, whether it be mud bottom or whatever it is, we're all looking for that current break that
Well, we
fish.
call them flathead ripples.
Yeah.
Flathead ripples over here, and they always hang on it. Just that pressure points, but
That the last year when we had that 35, 40 knots of wind, when we were trolling, I was catching fish in places I'll never ever catch fish again in my whole life. But the wind was making these funnels in the water, and I was just going from funnel to funnel to funnel and catching fish, and I'm like, there shouldn't be fish here, but because the wind had created these funnels or current lines, whatever you wanted to say, I was just going from one to the other, and Scotty and Cord were looking at me going, what are you doing? I said, just shut up and fish, and yeah, we did well.
yeah, it was a good session. But
That's when you won it.
yeah, we did win that. Yeah, that
it
was
was when the
fun.
tent blew away.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we hid bananas in your boat. It was great. Yeah.
Bananas in my boat.
Plain hard white sand doesn't really do much for us. Like we never catch much on that.
What do we find it hardest to catch fish at high tide? Would trolling be good? Well,
Well, Nick's a high tide specialist.
I still troll, but I find trolling is a good way to cover a lot of ground, especially when that water's up high. Like when the fish are off the flats, you've got those drop-offs and where the fish are all sort of congregated. But on that high tide, the fish are a lot more spread out. So yeah, I do find trolling a good tool at high tide if I'm not fishing in that deeper water. So
And that's where those 1 metre Tango shads sort of came from, you know, just to cover that little bit. I don't know, it just seems to get that lure a little bit above the weed. That's what we normally trial with the current, because the current lays your weed down. Yeah. You find you don't just foul up as much, and you get...
Well, I went last year, I went from trolling at high tide to, I've now gone to casting at high tide. I just look for where the, you know, where that top of the tide where there's lots of current flow, you know, we seem to have found like last year I think we were catching our fish when other people weren't, and then I wasn't catching fish when you guys were. So, but I just worked that out. That high tide spot for us last year was working really well.
Yeah,
so, and we cast the little flat shad.
Paul's asked a question there. Is there any way to troll in 4.5 to 5 metre depth? Yep. You can use big lures, or you can jig a vibe.
Well, this is the way Nick's going to win it this year.
But he's asked if you can troll, mate, in 4 minutes.
You can.
That's something that we've been doing a little bit of. So yeah, you can run those 89mm tangos. They'll get down to around that 20 foot if you fish them on light enough lines. So definitely something worth giving a crack.
Put the pressure on, you.
The last couple of years too, we've sort of gone not this size, the next one up at that 110mm fish trap. They pretty much work in your current, so you're clicking the boat in and out of gear, just crawling it along the bottom, you know, and you just get that little hop and it falls, and it hops and it falls, and you can get down in that depth doing it that way. So it covers ground again, and you've caught probably one of your biggest fish doing that technique, haven't you? So.
We're going to go to an ad break now, so there's a little video here on Tango shads, so have a bit of a look at that.
It's Flathead time, and I'm joined by Troy Dixon from Wilson, mate. We're talking Tango shads today, probably the best little flathead lure ever designed.
Oh, mate, over the last 3 years, this little lure has probably turned into one of the best flathead lures in the country.
Yeah, so, I mean, you guys won the Flathead Classic, Team Wilson, just with this lure.
Just with that lure, mate. So it's a big call, but that little lure won the Flathead Classic last year, and over the last 3 years, it's probably put us in the high top 10s.
Yep.
So it's pretty good little lure.
Oh, that's a nice fish.
Well
that's
done,
a nice
boys.
fish.
Yeah, baby.
Well done, lad.
That's what we need.
And Coy, what's the lure that's been doing the business?
It's the Xeric Tango Shad, definitely, without a doubt. And you can see we're up on the shallows here. So it just perfectly mimics the bait fish that are up here. It's got a nice tight action, and look, the flathead absolutely love it. It's a weapon, and you know, the #1 trolling lure for flathead.
Mate, they swim straight out of the box. They've got a great action. Tell us how you meant to fish the Tango Shad.
So they are designed to be able to troll in up to about 1.7 metres.
Yep.
So you troll them up in about, 2 to 4 kilometres an hour.
Yep.
And when they puff into that sand, they kick up the sand and things like that. So the flathead just can't resist it. I only got a 4-pound leader on, and he has just inhaled that little Tango shad. We've got a 73 centimetre flathead. Mate, you can't beat that.
So to add to that, the range is ever growing. You've got some new colours. Tell us about that.
Mate, we got some exciting new colours coming to be released later on this year. And they have been, in the testing of them, have been producing the goods. So.
That should be something that we point out, the testing of all the Xeric lures. You boys do a fair bit of that, don't you?
We do, mate. We do a lot of testing. Before we release these products to the market, we do a lot of testing. And that's why I get to go fishing a fair bit, which I enjoy.
Yeah.
But it's good to be able to give it to you blokes too, to come out and test it. So.
Well, look, I can testify that these things catch flathead, mate.
They do, mate. They catch flathead like no other lure.
I'm going to go catch one now.
Good.
Welcome back, guys. Don't forget, for the best 2 questions to go, we've got a couple of boxes to give away. We'll announce that as we go once we get a good question. We're about to move on to deep water fishing, and I'll start off the questions by throwing to Nick and just get a little bit of insight on how Nick approaches it. First question will be, how do you position your boat correctly?
So
That's a good question.
it is. Fishing deep water, some people call it the DC type of fishing, but it's actually a little bit more complicated than that. So what you've actually got to do when you're fishing the deep is really understand your sounder and know where to position the boat on where the fish are. So you're not just going out and aimlessly just drifting through the deep, hopping a lure along, hoping for the best. So the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've probably spent 4 or 5 hours out in the boat by myself each, like for 2 or 3 trips, and all I've done is mark waypoints. I've probably dropped 1,500 waypoints. I've deleted all my waypoints from last year, and I now know where every ledge is, every tree is, where every hump is, where every drop is, and then when I need to position the boat, I know exactly where to be. So a few years ago on the Flathead Classic, it was on one of the first days, and we'd pulled up at the pin bar probably 10 o'clock. Everyone had already been out there fishing. Everyone was fishing along the bank. We'd found a ledge probably 3-4 days prior and pulled a couple of fish of it. And I said, righto, these fish are going to be holding here. We pulled up there in the comp, literally got 6 to 8 fish in that first drift. Turned back around, everyone's fishing in close, has gone, oh, let's go out and fish beside these boys. We've done our next drift and caught another 6 fish, and people are drifting dead set rod tip away from us and not catching fish. So they didn't know what they were fishing at the time, and that's why they weren't catching the fish, because they weren't on the spot. So sometimes it can be as small as a ledge this high off the bottom, and that's what's holding the fish in the area. And if you haven't got your lure within a foot of those fish, you're not going to get the bite. So you've actually got to go out and do the homework now and work out where those little nooks and crannies are, because if you don't know where they are come classic time, you're going to waste your time. If you waste an hour looking, or you say you do one drift and you've missed 15 minutes of fishing trying to get on the right spot, you do that 3 times in the day, you've lost 45 minutes of fishing. So little things like that will make a big difference to the way that you actually put fish in the boat. All right. Bob asks, do you use different types of lures in the deep depending on clear or dirty water? So this is a really good question as well. I believe the flathead, I always look for clean water, but the flathead are always there. It's just they find it harder to see your lure, obviously, when it's dirty. So that's when you've got to go to a really noisy lure in the water. So something that vibrates really hard. 95mm fish trap, pretty much my go-to lure. Or big paddle tail plastics, so they've got a lot of vibration through the water. Depending on current is going to depend on the lure you use. The 110, it doesn't vibrate quite as hard as the 95, but when you do get in a situation where you can't feel your lure in the deep, that's where you need to go heavier, and that's where in those harder running currents, that's where I'm going to use that 110. Sometimes we will throw that 160, but it is a big lump of a lure, and it's quite hard to hang on to and fish for a long period of time. So it gets used in short bursts, sort of like the off the bench a bit. So, but majority of the time, that 95mm fish trap is the lure to go through. Probably 30, or say 15 to sort of 35, 40 foot. Then in that harder running water, step up to that 110.
Do you use side scan or down scan to find the fish in the deep?
Alright, so we might give a prize pack away to this question. I've quite often heard, and I get a lot of people saying to me, how do you find flathead on the side scan? You catch that many of them, you must be seeing them on the side scan. Anyone that tells you they can see a flathead on side scan, they're kidding themselves. In saying that though, like when a flathead is up off the bottom, they look like a normal fish, so you're going to pick them up. I've seen flathead in 40, 50 foot of water feeding a foot under the surface, so they do come up and actually chase through bait. So you will see them on the sounder in those instances, but basically the use of the sounder is more for finding that structure and using your navigational tools to keep that boat in the right spot. So yeah.
But the side scan is used for finding, like I use it a lot when we're trolling.
Yeah, just for finding that weed.
You find that weed at the edge of the weed. Yeah. You find that little groove in the like a gutter or something, especially when the tide's a bit full and you can't quite find it. I use it all the time for that. I think it's really good for that, the side scan.
I think the big thing too with the side scan is when you're doing that deep water, you're looking for the bait as well.
Yeah.
And those ledges that you're talking about, they hold the bait, and they. Again, we spoke about the shallow water with the weed and the rock. It's all about those current breaks. Those current breaks happen down there, not only up here where we can see them. So that's basically what you're looking for with a ledge and the bait sits behind that.
Yeah, well, in the deep
Right.
water you don't get the flathead ripples because there's too much
No,
area in
that's
between.
right,
That's
yeah.
where you do have to use your sounder and
Yeah.
get the most out of that.
There's
Yeah,
another one
that
for
was
you, Nick.
Daniel Springfield, I think that question came from. So, yeah, good, smart question.
All right. How do you use your electric when fishing deep? All the time. Basically, you've got to stay over the top of your lure. Unless you're over the top of your lure, you're going to get a lot of snags. And being able to use your boat and use your electric to be able to stay above it, yeah, it's a big part of being able to fish that deep water. There's plenty of people that can go out there and tow lures around, but being able to position that boat and get above the structure for one, but use your electric to stay on top of your lure is another technique. So
You use a foot pedal too, eh?
yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I use both. So
Yeah.
on our boat, we'll have nearly everyone will have a remote on.
Yeah.
So if someone's dealing with a fish or something like that, the other person can take over. But there's also a foot pedal on the front deck as well.
Yeah. So are you keeping it sideways to the current, or are you keeping
Yeah.
nose into the current?
You're governed by the current. You
Yeah.
just drive after your line. So
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Oh, that's good.
Good.
Yeah, that's a good point. What you say there, drive after your line. You know, like with your everyone's got their electrics and with their remotes. If you're fishing hence a 95 fish trap and the current's running, and you can do this trick yourself when you're out there playing around in the deep water, you can control your electric and go from like heading into the current. So you've got your electric holding into the current, and you're still drifting back with the current, but you can speed that drift up and slow it down by as simple as one number on your electric can mean the difference between your 95 fish trap being vertical or down there at 45 degrees where you don't want it, you want it vertical. So that one single speed can make a big difference.
And I think fishing the deep water, you have to put, like a lot of people talk about fishing up to 3-4 ounce jig heads. Like I would use a plastic that big and probably fish a 1 ounce jig head. So you don't have to fish really, really heavy. It's more about using your boat to stay on top of your lure.
Yeah.
I can fish a 1/2 ounce jig head through the middle of the pin bar in hard running water, and I think that's the difference between
Yeah.
why we catch fish and a lot of people go out there just trying to dong flathead on the head, which you will catch them occasionally doing that, but learning how to finesse your lure is a big part of it. So
the trick with that is the time on the water to actually feel that when you're
Oh,
going
yeah.
that speed, because
It's-
you're flying.
yeah, yeah. If you watch the water, you feel like you're sitting still, but as soon as you look up, you're like, holy shit,
Yeah, you're
we're belting
flying.
along. So
Yeah.
We've got a good
Right.
question going on here. This is from Danny Sands.
Danny Sands is onto it. Yeah.
He knows this answer anyway. Will the new moon impact the deep bite?
Let's ring Danny and ask him.
yeah,
That's the Danny hotline.
don't know, Denny, will it?
I definitely reckon that the new moon, if I can't remember where, I think we're just after the new moon.
Full's
Just-
just gone. Yeah, just
Yeah,
past the
just
full.
after.
Just
For the classic, we're just after.
after
After
the
the
new
full
moon.
moon.
So I don't think it'll play. If it was on the day of the new moon, I would say it. I hate it. Day of the full moon, day of the new moon. I
Yeah, I'm
hate
with
it.
you. Yeah.
I reckon the fish just
We've proved
go,
that a lot.
Go off. That's their public day off, their holiday.
Put it this way, Dicko, we all hope that it doesn't go into the deep.
Nick's hoping it does.
Yeah, Nick hopes it does.
Yeah.
We've seen it change overnight. So yeah, the fish.
Yeah, well, that's last year. Basically, did the opposite. You know, we were getting them, smacking them in the deep, and then
Yep.
basically the night before the Flathead Classic, all the fish pushed out of the deep and up onto the flats. So
And then that year that you had 2 years ago, we were belting them on the flats, and overnight they just went to the deep.
Boom, they're gone. Yeah.
That was, yeah.
Yeah. If anyone's got the answer to that, please just send it through. That'd be good. There's no.
When will
no
they
easy
go to the
answer.
deep? I reckon they're
Boothie
already
asks, do you think the current big baits in the shallows is a chance to win the Flathead Classic?
there.
I think it is, but I don't think you can rely solely on it.
Nah.
No.
I think it's a tool you've got to use sparingly, and I think it's going to be a tool that a lot of people use this year. But it's if you can pull 190 centimetre fish for the comp, that's
great points,
320 points or something.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so that one fish is basically a normal person's like score for the day.
Well, let's face like it's not just this year or whatever. It's been happening for a few
Yeah,
years
well,
now.
Franco and Chris.
And that, Chris
Yeah.
and that. Like, you look at those fish. Those guys were only catching.
I think
they
they caught
get
17 fish,
yeah.
17 fish for the whole comp, and they were, in the top 4 anglers, top 4
Yeah.
teams, as
Yeah.
a 2-man team.
So that it's not just happening this year, but I know for a fact I'm gonna have a big bait tied on all the time.
Yeah.
If we troll, like you'll probably see me up the front throwing a big hard body or a big swim bait, just to break it up, like you said, throw it here and there, see the right looking bit of water, a bit of those sand patches amongst the weed.
That's the good thing about having you got 3 people fishing on your boat.
Yeah.
You got 2 competent people that if there's fish there, they're going to catch them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if there's that you throwing that big bait around, if that's that big fish is there, he's more than likely going to eat that big bait before he eats the little. Even though they do eat jelly beans, but we're always.
Well, we done
Oh,
that. We
had it
done
today.
that last time that we done well, where I stood up the front casting those big lures and
Yeah, the big plastics. Yeah. That pulled a couple of 100-point fish here and there, and it's great. It's a real top up for your catch and for your scores. So.
yeah.
So Mark's asked a question here. Can you define what shallows are, please?
So shallows to us are
About this
anything from
4
from
metres.
100 mil to
4 metres.
yeah. But it all depends whether you
For us,
depends-
it'd probably
all
be
depends
that
who
2
you
For us,
metre
well,
mark.
yeah.
Put it this way, I don't reckon all my fish that I've caught this year haven't come out at anything deeper than about 1.5 metres.
yeah.
And you've caught a lot of big fish this year.
I've caught more big fish this year than I have any other year.
Yeah.
I've caught more 80s this year.
Pretty much all the big fish I've caught on this thing this year, you've visually seen them come up and belt it. So you're in water
Knee deep
that's
stuff.
like a foot deep. So
You can't go shallow enough.
you'll see them right up. I've spooked
No.
fish in 100 mil of water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly right.
Do you find that's more when the sun's up, when the water's warm, or you're getting them early, late, doesn't matter?
For me,
Yeah.
pretty much most of my fish will probably come in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's orientated with the tide too.
But
Obviously.
I've been up and spooked plenty of big fish like real early in the morning as well. I don't think it's sun orientated. I think it's more tide dependent on those spots. So,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
There's a question for you, Robbie.
Yeah, you take it.
Well, we touched on that before, and it's all about. Dicko was talking about current over the flats or the shallower water. So the features you're looking for is anything that breaks that current. You've got, why do some places fish better than other places? And it's all to do with the current. You need that current flow, which obviously is the baitfish highway. So the baitfish need to duck around and have a bit of a breather every now and again, and the big fish know that, so they sit on those current breaks. So anything that a rock, a tree in the water, a knob of eel grass, or anything that breaks the current. There's some flats, you look at the flat and it all looks exactly the same, but there's a tiny little black patch over there and a tiny little black patch over there. I can guarantee you cast there or there and you'll catch a fish because it's something different.
Or a big boat's run over the bank there, and it's cool.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, that worked well for us in the last year.
Yeah.
We fished a whole
Yeah, it gives you the ability, like today.
channel where the boat had run over.
Today we had a fish and there was a sandbank next to the main channel. There was a spot maybe as big as these 2 tables. Out in the channel, there was a forest of snotweed. You saw it on the sander. It looked like a school of fish.
Yeah.
There was one little patch in there I've thrown in. I've missed the fish on the hard body, and it's another little cool technique. I watched it come up, and the hard body had a little bit of weed on it. He's missed it. Cord's thrown in with a flat shad. Hop, bang, he got it. So if you get the interest, don't be afraid to see your mate and
straight
try
back.
and catch his fish. So,
Yeah.
All right. Is this
This one's for Dicko this year. Dicko's the master of retrieve this year, but he's touched on that a little bit with the flat shads.
Is there a particular retrieve?
this is with the shallows and the big baits.
Oh,
So
for
we're
the
talking
big
about
baits.
shallows and big baits.
Yeah. So with the retrieves, I sort of touched on it earlier, but what you want to achieve with this bait is to get it to glide out sideways. A lot of the hits are going to come on the paws, And what you're doing is basically you can either just crank the handle, and if you crank it and just keep doing a solid crank, it'll just kick it out, and then it'll grab it and kick it back the other way, and it'll literally just glide like that. So you can swim it right out like a foot each way, and like I said, you got 2 foot coverage where it's actually belting back each way. And I think as that bait's gliding off to the side, it sort of looks like it's dying. That's when those big fish are just going to come up and sort of belt it. But I do use it on quite a fast retrieve as well, especially when searching like big open flats where you're not particularly on a certain bit of structure. I'll just wind it quite quick and you'll just get it to S-swim. So you quite often get some big fish, 60 centimetre plus, like 60 to 70s, come up and just sort of tailing it and shoot up and grab it, doing it like that as well. So but most of the real big fish I've caught have been doing it ultra slow and just getting it just under that surface as well. So you can also fish it basically like real slow, and if you have it with no weight, basically these fins will sit out of the water and it'll create a ripple on the water as it's swimming. So that's quite an effective tool, like early morning. I haven't had one literally buff it off the top, but probably 50 or 100 mil under the surface, and when they're coming up and hitting it, they're literally just coming up and throwing this big head side to side, and it's like someone's just let a bomb off in the water when you've got a 90 centimetre flathead trying to throw that out of his mouth.
The first time I threw it around, mate, I had one just come from about 10 foot to the right of it, and it just hit it with so much aggression, it actually knocked it out of the water and then just sat there and looked at it.
It's epic when you see a fish like move 5 metres from your bait to just come in and belt it. It's something you can't explain until you see it, but just to see a fish of that calibre chase your lure, but to actually see it belt it, and the mayhem it causes after that is pretty epic.
Yeah, they're not little fish you're targeting.
Here you go, Scotty.
There's one for you, Scotty.
Okay, this is our last prize pack actually. Aaron Redman. Do you use scents on your lures? I think we probably all say yes here. Yeah. We use a variety of them. There's a heap on the market, they all seem to work. But I find I use them a lot on the vibes. A lot of the plastics, you got your Gulp and you got Z-Man, they've all got a sort of a bit of an impregnated smell, but these don't. In the TPE material, it's a bit hard. But yeah, we smear them up. I do it on hard bodies. I do it on these. It can't hurt, put it that way. I've never found a day where
if it doesn't work, it gives you confidence anyway.
That's it.
It's all about confidence.
Well, I use it
with the flat shads too, Dicko. We fill the belly up a bit, and it keeps it in there for a while. It does wear off. Just keep applying it now and then.
Mate, the way I look at it, I use it. I use it a lot, and I think it just sunscreen.
If you miss
and all
that bite, it's going to get that second bite to come back as well. So
most of the time, that's what happens is when you retreat. He's missed it. And you drop it back and let it sit there. Most of the time,
stick it.
Dead stick it, and you hop. As soon as you move it, they just eat it again. So no, scent. I think scent works. Some scents do, some scents don't. But I use it as a confidence thing, and it just gets rid of. If you got sunscreen or anything, any foreign smells, it just gets it on you. I rub it on my hands.
So you bathe in it?
Oh yeah, all the time. All the time.
That's why you catch so many fish.
No, it's just one of those things.
Here's one for you, Dicko. Shane Woolston asks, let's assume it's going to be windy. How do you cope with the wind in the Classic?
Probably a Shambarai.
You change boats. Yeah, no. I actually don't mind the wind, especially the way I'm fishing the last few years. Wind's my friend.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
The only problem with the wind is that it can concentrate a lot of people into one area.
Yeah.
That's probably the one negative about it.
Yeah, but I mean, I actually, the Top Gun, it was pretty windy. The last 2 Top Guns has been pretty windy.
Yeah.
And I like it when it's like that. I don't know. Just my style of fishing now is just because I'm very, very, what could you say? How do you say it? Thorough, or I just sit there and pretty much just work everything.
Methodical,
That's a word. I can't say that.
I think with the wind, you've just got to go out, and this comes from your pre-fish as well, as having spots that you can go and hide in those certain parts of the wind. One of the biggest pieces of advice I'll give you, it doesn't matter how many fish are on a bank and your favourite spot and how many fish you'll catch there, if you can't fish it properly, you're not going to catch the fish.
Exactly right.
So you're better off going to a bank that holds half the amount of fish that you can fish properly, and you'll pull more fish off that than you will trying to fish and not being able to feel your lure and fishing too heavy to trying to get that belly out of your line. So yeah, always fish to the conditions and put that effort in the pre-fish and find those spots. Like if it's blowing 20 knot northerlies in a pre-fish, still go.
Exactly.
You know, if it blows, if it blows
exactly.
20 knots in the classic, you've got to know where to go and fish.
Every
so.
time, like
That's the thing that determines where we start every day.
Yep.
You know, which is the wind direction. You know, you chase that cleaner water, or we do anyway.
Yeah.
You know, fishing in soup, you'll catch the odd one, but you know the bait tends to congregate in that nicer water, and we go looking for it. We'll do a lot of driving if, and you're the same. I've seen you zoom around and Troy, and dirty water will work, but the nicer looking water generally holds the fish.
But that all comes back down to your pre-fish. It's not all about fishing. Sometimes it's all about just cruising around, watching what's happening, watching what's pushing where, and how the current goes here and where the weed goes on that part of the tide, so you know not to be there at that part of the tide. So it's
Well, that's what a pre-fish is all about, learning not to waste time. I touched on it earlier, where if you waste 10 minutes 6 times for the day, there's an hour of fishing gone. So
you're right.
my brother, the Flathead Magician, he's worked out you need 3 45 centimetre fish every hour, every day, every hour of the classic to actually win the comp.
that's
so,
about 1,200 points a day, isn't it? If you catch
we
three,
work on 1,500, 1,500 and 1,200.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
But that's similar to what Greenie says as well. You know, when Greenie does his talks about it. So yeah.
Yeah, so if you're
3
wasting...
an hour, it sounds easy, but it ain't.
No,
Yeah,
not when you got to do it for 10 hours a day, so...
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I
right.
put it like last year. I think I said to my boys, I said I want 5 legal fish out here each day. I think we only did it once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
If you can find that little bit of better quality fish, then your average obviously goes down. But yeah, 45 centimetre fish, 3 an hour to win the comp.
Yeah.
When you go 3 hours or more, I think last year we had 11:30. We had 10 points on the scoreboard,
Yeah.
and we ended up with about 1,000 points,
And I
1,100 points.
I think the year before we got something like 110 fish for the classic.
Yep.
And they're all little ones. It was a waste of time.
yeah, I got 36 fish on that first day, and then I found out that you caught. I don't know how many you caught.
We caught 47 at an average of 58 centimetres.
Yeah, that was.
that
I got
hurts.
shot down in flames.
Pretty. I can tell you now.
That's I don't care. Best score I've ever had for the Flathead first day.
It was an awesome day fishing, but I've never had a flathead day like that. That was the best day's flathead fishing I've ever had, and to do it in a comp was pretty epic.
That's a great example of fish in the deep water, fish on the flats.
Yeah.
That particular year, like there was a lot of fish in the deep water where you guys were, and there was a lot of fish on the flats, or where we were anyway. There was a lot of fish. So
That'll probably roll into the next question, Troy. Jason Finch asks, have you found the flathead much harder to find this year in the pre-fish?
yes.
Yeah, we'll all say it, and you know I spend a lot of time in tackle shops, and you speak to a lot of blokes, you know, you with your business, and you know everyone's struggled. It's been a really
Well, I think the
tough.
best day I've had this year has been 17 legal fish, and you know, I mean, that's like going on previous years. That's pretty ordinary.
Yeah,
You know, I
exactly.
reckon I probably would have caught 700 or 800 flathead by now. I think I've got about 200.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, it's a different year, but
I think the rain's got a lot to do it. Like we haven't had any rain this year, so and
But-
didn't get much of a wet over Christmas.
in saying that, but I've caught more big fish. I've caught more big fish this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So
Yeah.
you know,
yeah, those schools are that 40 to 45 point scorer. We're not finding them.
there is guys that are.
Oh, some of the guys
Yeah.
that have
You know, like this.
Switched
When,
on,
if,
they're
if you
doing-
if you believe everything on Facebook, there's lots of guys catching heaps.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously there's some guys that I know they're catching good numbers of them, but I'm sure it'll all work itself out during the Flathead Classic.
Yeah.
When there's a few hundred boats on the water, it sorts people out. Yeah,
Changes the story.
yeah.
How many? Joshua asks, how many casts and different lures would you try before moving? That depends on the confidence that you've got in the spot. If your name's Troy Dixon, ACCA Maverick, legend flathead fisherman, you stay in the same place all day and move 5 feet either side and don't move.
Yeah, that's it. And have I'll put it this way. I think we've got 24 rod holders in the boat, and I have 10 rods. Adam has 10 rods, and my brother has the rest. And they've all got different lures on them. So it's just rotate through the lures. If you're on a bank and you've got confidence in it, and you've got bait, you got tidal flow, you got bait there, mate, I'll run through that whole 10 rods before I even,
Yeah.
And if one of us hasn't caught a fish there within that,
Probably
period.
45 minutes, isn't it?
That's
probably.
a good-
I'm out of there, but yeah.
Probably just a good tip from.
But I'll come back there.
Yeah.
Come back there in 25 minutes. That tide's a little bit different. It's a different story. You get 10 fish
Yeah.
there.
Probably one good point that you say you've got all your rods with different stuff on them. Preparation is the key in this
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
It's no point getting out there tying leaders on, tying lures on. Most of the guys that are sort of switched on with it, they'll be prepared. You'll have, I've been to a few of these talks now. We talked to George Sands the other week. He's got his little section where he's got a plan in his head. These lures, these lures, these lures. We're the same.
Adam is just with his stuff. He'll have his confidence little packs he has, and he'll have 10 heads or something glued up with his confident lure.
Yeah.
Or whatever, and then he'll have the next one, and then he'll have the next one. He just has it, so he's just like ready to roll.
Preparation's the key, really.
Yeah.
And
And then we go through, and that didn't work, and you're in the tackle box sorting what else for the next day.
Yeah.
I probably fish nearly the total opposite to that. I probably take a run and gun approach where I'll fish a spot for 15 minutes, and I sort of think if you haven't caught the active fish there in those 15 minutes, that's when you start, where's my sandwich? Is there a beer somewhere? Or what's going on? You stop paying attention. So as soon as I always say a change is as good as a holiday. You put 15 minutes in your best spot on this bank, then 15 minutes in your next spot, and you might only have 10 spots that you rotate. But if you're only there for 15 minutes each time, as soon as you get 2 or 3 fish, you go, righto, let's go to the next spot. And I quite often get people saying to me, I've been fishing that spot for an hour and hadn't caught a fish. You pulled up and caught 3 fish, and
then you left.
Where did you go? And I said, I had a better spot to go to, just to sort of annoy him a bit,
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. Those fish are there, but you just got to get those active fish at the time. So if I'm catching 3 fish in 10 casts, I'm not taking off. I'm staying there for that bite. But definitely, I find a change is as good as a holiday.
Here's a good question. How many boats follow you on the game day, and does it worry you? Well, at the end of the day,
the green boat. Follow the green boat. Yeah.
It doesn't
Oh, wave
really.
in. Hey, coming over like there we go.
It doesn't really worry us how many boats follow you, because they haven't got their plan in their head what you're doing. Concentrate on what you're doing and doing it, providing that the people that are following you are courteous about it and not sitting on top of your lures and giving everyone enough space to do what they're doing. It's no you're sitting right on top of somebody's lures. Back off and let them do their thing, and then do your troll run or whatever it is. But I'm sure Dicko, Nick, maybe not so much with not doing as much trolling as what we do, and may or may not do this year, but we can certainly change trolling paths to alter stuff so people don't catch fish. And you know your area. It comes back to pre-fishing. As Nick said, it's putting the boat on that pinpoint to catch those fish. And if you've got someone hunting you down and annoying you, my greatest saying, and I say it to Scotty all the time, is that people can't get on your bite.
They can't catch a fish.
They can't get on your bite because you know exactly what's going on in your head, exactly where that ledge is, exactly where that boat is, where that bank or that lump is that you're trying to get on there. So it only takes, Nick's done it plenty of times when you got people on your tail out in the bar. You just move over 10 feet.
Exactly like that story I was talking about earlier, where I did the drift. We caught 8 fish on the first drift, caught 6 on the next. Everyone's come out and drifting around. It's a couple of drifting the exact same line.
Yeah.
And all I did was I did a dummy drift out wider. Everyone followed us out here, and then all I did is come back and got the perfect drift where I wanted to go again.
Yeah, exactly right. So that's the same with us with our trolling. But where we run into the problem with the trolling is where they'll come and they'll sit on top of your lures, and that's a little bit, because obviously that's
obviously,
a little bit of a bugger.
Everyone's pretty easy going in the Flathead Classic, but you still got to be courteous, and the thing is, like we've said a couple of times, you can't catch someone else's fish if you don't know why they're catching them there. So
Yeah, exactly.
I try not to let it worry me.
yeah, I don't let it worry me,
mate. Because if you're worried about what they're doing or what who else is doing,
Yeah, you're not concentrating on what you're doing.
It's going to happen. Like that little green boat that we have, it's like a little magnet. It seems to attract them, but mate, you just concentrate on what you're doing.
Do your thing.
Just do your thing.
I usually find if someone's catching fish around me and I can't catch them,
Get
I'll
away.
sit there for 15 minutes, and I do. I literally go right
Go
over
away.
out of here because it starts
Yep.
doing your head in. And
Starts
nick you in
doing
the
your head in. Yep, exactly
and you go,
right.
I can't catch these fish. I don't know what they're doing. I can't work it out. I'm going to go find some fish that I can catch.
The only time that it will work is if that's where you've been fishing and you know that stuff and you're going, damn, they're catching fish and I know I've got to be 5 feet over there. Just move over a bit and give me a run at it. And if you can do that and get your run, you'll catch fish.
But a lot of the time when you turn up and leave,
Boothie's onto us. We've got 10 or 15 minutes to go, so we want to try and bang a few questions out quickly. Hayley Castle, she asks, when you spook a big fish, do they relocate or stay in that same general area? I don't think they go far.
I think they stay
There's a
in the
reason.
area.
There's a reason they're there. So
quite often what will happen, they'll go out and come back around behind your boat, I reckon.
Dicko and I were out in the boat one day and we seriously seen probably 50, 80 centimetre fish, the whole bottom lifted up and it slowly moved away, and Dicko and I are on the front of the boat going, no way. Do you think we could catch one of them fish?
No,
not a
not
chance.
one. No, I don't reckon it. I reckon they just stay in the area. But if I spook one, if one comes up on my lure and hits it, especially when I'm throwing these big stuff, I usually have a few more casts and I'm out of there, and then I'll come back.
Yeah.
yeah, I've watched you do that a lot. You work your spots.
Yeah,
and
and then come back.
come back in there.
So the next question is, when trolling, do you impart movement with the rod? Well, that again comes down to the day and your pre-fishing. If you've been doing pre-fishing, you'll understand how the fish are feeding for the day. Sometimes you'll need a big drop back to get the lure to float up a fair bit and they'll whack it right at the top of the float. Other times you just hold it straight, and other times it's short movements of the rod. So it depends on what the fish are feeding on during that day. So you've got to roll with it. Is that the same thing?
Again, you've got 3 guys. If you're trolling, you've got 3 guys. Usually, one's ripping the rod. And again, if you're trolling over the top of weed, I find ripping the rod through that.
Having a rod with that right amount of tip
turns them on.
Quite often you'll be stuck in the weed or load up.
Again,
give it a whack.
You got to. It changes every day. But if you, like I said, 3 guys in the boat, 3 people doing different things. One person's going, hey, he's catching what if he's doing that certain action. Well, next minute everyone's doing that certain action.
Yeah, that's right.
So, like I said, that just comes to.
I think when ripping the rod, your lure's basically just cruising along, and then you rip it, and the fish gets excited and chases it, and then it stops in his face. He's got nothing else to do but just go whack and eat it.
Yeah.
And it's right.
A lot of the time it's a reaction.
Yeah.
A lot of the time you got to do it too to crack the weed off your line. But
Righto. Which lure would you have, Robbie? Here we go. Read the question.
Okay, Macca asked, if you had one lure, what would it be? So if I had one lure, and we're talking flathead here, if I had one lure to fish the whole of the east coast of Australia, that would be it right there. Whether it be that colour or Fat Betty, the famous Fat Betty, it'd be a 95 mil fish trap. Because I can fish shallow, I can fish deep, you can do whatever you want with it. Some of these other lures, like the flat shads, they're very specific. You can fish deep with them with adding, putting different jig heads and stuff like that. But something like this, straight out of the packet, tie it on. You either upgrade your leader if you're fishing in the deep, or lighten your leader if you're fishing in the shallow. But I don't know, Scotty.
Mine would be the 65.
Yeah, either or. One of them.
I'm probably
this year it's a flat shad.
Yeah.
I'm going to go something a little bit different, and I'm going to go the 95 mil fish trap. basically, like Robbie said, you can fish that vertically. You can fish it in 60, 70 foot of water, but you can also fish it up and roll it quickly above. Like we quite often use it as a search tool when fishing like up on the edges and just rolling flats. You burn it quite quickly, and you'll get that reaction bite with it as well. So
Yeah.
It catches everything.
It's a versatile lure. So,
And then if you get lazy and you want to troll it, like Scotty was talking about before, you just chuck it out the bat, drink your beer or chew on your sandwich and just pull the boat in and out of gear until it hits the bottom.
Walk it
Put
along.
the
You
boat
catch a
into gear.
90 odd that way? You know,
Yeah,
certain comp.
90, 95, yeah.
Dan has asked, do you use clips or loop knots? Scott?
Stuff. Normally the mustard fast hatch clips. So I sort of go with the size 1 if I'm trolling a Tango shad. Doesn't seem to affect the lure. You like a 0. So
I like the zeros, yeah.
either way, for the vibes, probably not so much. I tie straight to the split ring.
Yeah, I don't loop knot on my time.
I just
straight
find
on.
that sort of gives you a bit more direct action to the lure. Today I was lazy. I had my Tango shad rod. I busted off on another rod. I thought I'll just put a plastic on this. So I hooked the plastic onto my fast hatch clip, which I normally don't do either, but it's got a 77 centimetre fish and it'll held together.
I tie direct to my plastics even. You know, anything
Yeah,
with a
yeah,
split
normally
ring,
So
we
do
do,
I.
yeah.
So do I,
anything,
yeah.
you know,
Well,
like-
I'm different. I tie loop knots.
yeah, I'll tie loop knots on anything
everything.
that doesn't have
Again, it comes down to
But-
what you've got confidence in. That's
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't think you gain any more movement. You've already got that movement in the split ring on the top. How are you gaining more movement with a loop knot as well? You know, I find. I'm not saying a loop knot's not a strong knot, but I find something like a uni knot is a lot stronger than a loop knot. So
Yeah, I know.
personally.
Adam ties directly to his jig heads. He just ties straight to it, like just a blood knot.
My theory with, and I do the same as Adam. My theory with that is that what I do with the rod tip,
Yeah.
I want that lure
Lure.
doing what I'm doing with the rod tip, other than having to compensate for the loop. Even if it's only a little tiny 6mm loop in there, I want that lure to do what I want it to do instead of compensating and wobbling around with the loop. But you're different.
That's everyone's different. I've just found with especially with that this year, with that little flat shad and that little jig head, that loop knot just seems to be, I don't know, works for me. I'm just not changing. That's
The
for
clips
sure.
are great for trolling. You can change quick.
Oh, definitely change colours and that.
I do the same with the big minnows. I don't think it affects them.
Just
so.
a little tip too. When you're trolling these smaller lures with your size 8 trebles and so forth on them, it is absolutely dead set paramount that you continually check your hooks. If one of your hooks is slightly out of kilter, it's got a little bit of a bend on it, get it off and put another one on there, because that lure won't swim the same. And you're going, why was I catching fish? And then, you can't.
Or you're going along and your mate's going, oh, I've got another bite. Oh, I've got another bite. So, mate, what's going on with your hooks? Oh, no, they're fine. Oh, I've got another bite. So change those hooks.
Yeah.
They're folded over, or they're, Flathead have got quite hard mouths. If you have a look at a little Tango shad, she's only got little tiny fine hooks.
Yeah.
So
that's where sometimes with the fast hatch clips, to quickly change a lure, or we actually have a box with split rings which you can change those hooks with your fingernails pretty quickly.
with your hands, you could.
Yeah, that's if you got.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
Right, we've got another question up there, Scotty.
Kurt Dillman asks, do you rig big lures differently or strike differently? This is our last question for the night. We filled up our time frame. Big lures differently, Nick?
I think I've touched on it already. I run double rings just to get a bit more movement in those hooks.
Yep.
And I actually run bigger, finer gauge hooks for flathead. Like these hooks are set up for barra fishing.
Barra and
They're
cod,
still
yeah.
super sharp and you can use them for flathead. But with that big mouth, I want as many hook points as I can.
Are you you're using the mustard saltisms?
Yeah, the 2.0 saltism. So
Yeah.
the gape's probably, I don't know, about another 5mm wider than what you've got with these hooks. So they sort of sit out a bit wider than the body, and I think just gives it a little bit better hookup rate.
So that's the same hook, the saltism treble, the same hook that comes on our vibes and our Tango shads
Yeah.
and stuff straight out of the packet.
They're still
sticky
4
sharp,
times strong treble, but they're just a
A
lot
lot
finer
finer,
gauge. And
yeah. They're a forged hook, so they're light but strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other part to that question there, Nick, was do you strike different? Well,
I can tell you now, like those Venom swim bait rods take a little bit to load up, and when you've got big hooks like this, for me, I'm almost sitting there like I'm trying to hook a barra. I'm trying to get those hooks into a fish because, like I mentioned earlier, those fish are coming straight to the top, throwing that head side to side, and you can see this white lure just moving. You know, like.
So, but you're not trying to strike like a rodeo rider or an up here.
I'm
You're
pulling
trying
sideways,
to
trying to
pulling
keep
sideways,
that
yeah.
head low.
To try and keep it
but
down.
just
yeah.
try to get those hooks in, and then it's very hard when fishing those big heavy rods because you don't get a lot of bend in them, especially when the fish is coming at you. You're just continually whining and trying to keep that pressure on the fish. And I actually lost another 90.
Oh, we've got a rogue question popped up.
Oh, rogue question. Go on, Scotty.
A question
Scotty can show you the
from
video.
Greg L. I wonder what the L stands for. But Robbie, have you ever hooked yourself with a fish trap?
I have hooked myself many times, but there is a
What was your favourite spot?
There is a famous video going around, and it was the start of the Flathead Classic. We were in our #1 secret spot, and there was another boat moving in on us, and I was at the time I'd said, "Cord, give me one of those fat betties. I'm going to tie it on," and put it on the seat of the boat, and this other boat was coming closer, so I jumped on the seat to block him so he couldn't get into our purple spot, and that went as close to the brown hole as you possibly could. So Cord the mad scientist was madly ripping a hook out of my bottom before the classic. Well, we got it done,
It
didn't
was
we?
quite interesting.
There's a video if you want to watch it later.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, guys, thanks for that. Appreciate you all watching. We're going to try and answer all your questions on Facebook tomorrow, so check back in. We'll also save this up onto YouTube at some stage in the next couple of days and get it up so everyone can watch it at a later stage. Appreciate your help. Thank you, Scotty, Robbie, Nick, Dicko. Good luck to everyone in the Flathead Classic this year. We'll look forward to seeing you on the water.
And just remember, follow the green boat.
Thanks, guys.
Enjoy the classic.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.